We got a pretty good group to wrap up our day here. It's exciting. Looks like we got just about everywhere covered. Over in Steubenville, Harrison County, Gallia County, Heath, and Columbus, AOTL crew. So thank you all for joining us here and closing out our day on PALS TV. Next, we're going to be heading to Columbus and joining Phil for our weekly book club lesson and reading. So enjoy the next segment as we go live to Columbus and join Phil.
Welcome back, gang, and welcome to the new faces as well, people that haven't got so much of our story so far. We're coming into the home stretch of Don Quixote right now, so let's do a recap, and we'll get a little more comprehensive recap because we've got some people that may not know the story or where we're at. So Don Quixote is a fairly wealthy, but not really rich, Spanish nobleman after knights have gone away. Renaissance times, basically. And he likes to read stories about knights, and he reads them so much, he decides to become one. He goes off and has a lot of adventures with his squire Sancho Panza, who is a farmer that works on Don Quixote's estate. And these adventures are not real big knightly adventures because dragons don't exist. Ogres don't exist. There aren't any other knights for him to fight. So he ends up attacking people that he believes are bad guys in a story, but are just people walking around. He's had a lot of these adventures, and recently the people that are worried about him, that he's frittering away all his money, and will probably do himself an injury if he keeps up with this nonsense. He's a fairly aged man. That they've got him and they've captured him essentially, but brought him back home, and they're discussing what they should do. And one of the priests that is in there is arguing with Don Quixote that all these stories that he believes in aren't true. And Don Quixote, hi Alex, having a good time in the park? And Don Quixote is arguing, well, look, we've got all these stories by these very famous people. Of course they're true. Let's go through this. And we come back into that argument. Nearly at the end of it. There's the correct screen to share. Here's our story. So Don Quixote has just been listing a bunch of the famous knights and all the things that they are supposed to have done. And some of these knights really did exist, but they didn't actually fight dragons. Which is the canon or priest's response. The canon was amazed to hear the medley of truth and fiction Don Quixote uttered, and to see how well acquainted he was with everything relating or belonging to the achievements of his knight-errantry. So he said in reply, again, that Don Quixote has been talking about, well, this knight, El Cid, for instance, was a real person, but he didn't do all of the stories. There are legends about him that aren't true. Don Quixote says, well, if he's real, then it's all real. The canon says, well, that doesn't make any sense. It's kind of amazing you believe that. And he responds with, priest responds with, I cannot deny, Senor Don Quixote, that there is some truth in what you say, especially as regards the Spanish knights errant. And I'm willing to grant, too, that the 12 peers of France existed. But I am not disposed to believe that they did all the things that the Archbishop Turpin relates of them. The priest is saying, yeah, these people really did exist, but these stories are not all true. Some of it can't be true. Oh, come on. For the truth of the matter is, they were knights chosen by the kings of France and called peers because they were all equal in worth, rank, and prowess. At least if they were not, they ought to have been. It was a kind of religious order, like those of Santiago or Calatrava in the present day, in which it is assumed that those who take it are valiant knights of distinction and good birth. And just as we now say a knight of St. John or of Alcantara, they used to then say a knight of the 12 peers, because 12 equals were chosen for that military order. No, this wasn't some mystic thing, and they were out fighting dragons. It was just like a real knighthood today. And today we still have knighthoods. The Order of the Bath, particular, is an English knighthood. One of the very high ones that you can be in. But if you are a Knight of the Bath, that does not mean that you go out fighting dragons or fighting at all. You can be given a knighthood for services of art, not a member of the Bath, believe it or not, of the British Empire, but the composer and director, Andrew Lloyd Webber, who did Cats and Phantom of the Opera, all that stuff. He's a knight, but trust me, he doesn't go out fighting dragons. This is what the priest is arguing. That there was a Cid, as well as a Bernardo del Carpio. There can be no doubt, but that they did the deeds people say they did, I hold to be very doubtful. You know, he's saying these two people, yes, absolutely existed, but you know, there are stories about them that aren't true. In that other matter of the pin of Count Pierres that you speak of, and say is near Babieca's saddle in the armory, I confess my sin, for I'm either so stupid or so short-sighted that though I have seen the saddle, I've never been able to see the pin, in spite of it being as big as your worship says it is. So there was this magic pin in a story that Don Quixote says, well, this is in there, in the king's armory. So it must be a true story. The priest says, you know, I've gone and looked where you say it is, and I've never seen this thing. For all that, it is there, without any manner of doubt, said Don Quixote. And more, by token, they say it is enclosed in a sheath of cowhide to keep it from rusting. Don Quixote says, well, it's definitely there. Maybe you didn't see it because it's next to the saddle, and it's also in leather, so they just kind of look the same. Maybe you missed it. All that may be, replied the canon, but by the orders I have received, I do not remember seeing it. The priest says, you know, I'll tell you, you might be right, but I've definitely not seen this. However, granting it is there, that is no reason why I'm bound to believe the stories of all those Amadises and of all that multitude of knights they tell us about. Nor is it reasonable that a man like your worship, so worthy, with so many good qualities, and endowed with such a good understanding, should allow himself to be persuaded that such wild, crazy things as are written in those absurd books of chivalry are really true. The priest says, maybe it is there. But even if it's there, that doesn't mean that all this stuff is true. I don't believe it's true, and you're an intelligent person. You shouldn't believe it's true either. It's just absurd to believe that. A good joke that, returned Don Quixote. Books that have been printed with the king's license and with the approbation of those to whom they have been submitted and read with universal delight and extolled by great and small, rich and poor, learned and ignorant, gentle and simple, in a word, by people of every sort, of whatever rank or condition they may be, that these should be lies. I said, Don Quixote says, they printed these books. Why would you think that these books would be lies? People really like these books. How can something that everybody likes be a lie? And above all, when they carry such an appearance of truth with them, for they tell us the father, mother, country, kindred, age, place, and the achievements step by step and day by day performed by such a knight or knights. He says, not only should we expect these to be true, just because they're written down, but they've got all this detail in them. And who would just make up all that detail? Hush, sir, utter not such blasphemy. Trust me, I'm advising you now to act as a sensible man should. Only read them, and you will see the pleasure you will derive from them. Stop arguing with me. The problem is you're not reading these books. And if you read, you're going to get on my side on this. You go read these. For come, tell me, can there be anything more delightful than to see, as it were, here now displayed before us, a vast lake of bubbling pitch with a host of snakes and serpents and lizards and ferocious, terrible creatures of all sorts swimming about in it, while from the middle of the lake there comes a plaintive voice saying, Knight, whosoever thou art who beholdest this dread lake, if thou wouldst win the prize that lies hidden beneath these dusky waves, Prove the valor of thy stout heart, and cast thyself into the midst of its dark burning waters. Else thou shalt not be worthy to see the mighty wonders contained in the 7 castles of the 7 fays that lie beneath this black expanse. And then the knight, almost ere the awful voice had ceased, without stopping to consider, without pausing to reflect upon the danger to which he is exposing himself, without even relieving himself of the weight of his massive armor, commending himself to God and to his lady, plunges into the midst of the boiling lake. And when he little looks for it, or knows what his fate is to be, he finds himself among flowery meadows, with which the Elysian fields are not to be compared. Not only that he's good, I mean, have you seen this story where there's this really scary thing, and a knight's coming up and he hears a voice says, "Jump in the scary thing." And the knight jumps in the scary thing, and it's not scary at all. There's all these flowers, and it's really delightful. He doesn't even think about it, he just does it. That's a great story. How could you not believe that's true? Pardon me. The sky seems more transparent there, and the sun shines with a strange brilliancy. And a delightful grove of green leafy trees presents itself to the eyes and charms the sight with its verdure, while the ear is soothed by the sweet untutored melody of the countless birds of gray plumage that flit to and fro among the interlacing branches. Don Quixote is just describing this wonderful place. Says, "Oh, it looks so much better than anything else here. I keep choking. I'm gonna have to go get a drink real quick. I'll be right back." You ever notice once you start choking, you just can't stop until you do something about it. You can't keep reading. Doesn't work. All right, so back to Don Quixote describing this place. Here he sees a brook whose limpid waters, like liquid crystal, ripple over fine sands and white pebbles that look like sifted gold and purest pearls. Again, he's just describing it. And in fact, he just continues to describe it for the rest of this paragraph. So we'll just jump into that. There he perceives a cunningly wrought fountain of many-colored jasper and polished marble. Here another of rustic fashion, with the little mussel shells and the spiral white-yellow mansions of the snail, disposed in studious disorder, mingled with fragments of glittering crystal and mock emeralds, make up a work of varied aspect, where art, imitating nature, seems to have outdone it. Not only does it look good in the natural world, there's all this neat fountains and stuff. That's got to be great. And he continues on, just describing. Let's see. How long is he just going to describe? Quite a ways. Suddenly, there is presented to his sight a strong castle or gorgeous palace with walls of massy gold, turrets of diamond, and gates of jacinth. In short, so marvelous is its structure that though the materials of which it is built are nothing less than diamonds, carbuncles, rubies, pearls, gold, and emeralds, the workmanship is still more rare. Then look, there's this castle that he sees, and it's all filled with jewels, but as pricey as the jewels are, they're put together in such a way that it's even more fantastic. And after having seen all this, what can be more charming than to see how a bevy of damsels comes forth from the gate of the castle in gay and gorgeous attire, such that, were I to set myself now to depict it as the histories describe it to us, I should never have done. And then how she, who seems to be the first among them all, takes the bold knight who plunged into the boiling lake by the hand, and without addressing a word to him, leads him into the rich palace or castle, and strips him as naked as when his mother bore him, and bathes him in lukewarm water, and anoints him all over with sweet-smelling unguents, and clothes him in a shirt of the softest sendal, all scented and perfumed, while another damsel comes and throws over his shoulder a mantle, which is said to be worth at the very least a city, and even more. And he says, then you got this great place, and all these wealthy, noble women come out, and they take you in, and they take care of the knight. And they bathe him and give him really fancy clothes. And they treat him real nice. This is a really good story. How charming it is then when they tell us how, after all this, they lead him to another chamber where he finds the table set out in such style that he is filled with amazement and wonder to see how they pour out water for his hands, distilled from amber and sweet-scented flowers, how they seat him on an ivory chair, to see how the damsels wait on him all in profound silence, how they bring him such a variety of dainties so temptingly prepared that the appetite is at a loss which to select, to hear the music that resounds when he is at table, by whom or whence produced he knows not. And after they get him bathed and dressed and treat him all nice, then they take him in, they give him this really nice food, and they play music while he's eating. How wonderful this is. And then when the repast is over and the table's removed, for the knight to recline in the chair, picking his teeth perhaps as usual, and a damsel, much lovelier than any of the others, to enter unexpectedly by the chamber's door, and herself by his side, and begin to tell him what the castle is, and how she is held enchanted there, and other things that amaze the knight and astonish the readers who are perusing his history. Just when you get done, the knight's just sitting there, and one of the noble women will always come over and says, "Hey, this looks really nice. We are locked under an enchantment, and there's this cool adventure that you can have." But I will not expatiate any further upon this, as it may be gathered from it that whatever part of whatever history of a knight-errant one reads, it will fill the reader, whoever he be, with delight and wonder. And take my advice, sir, and as I said before, read these books, and you will see how they will banish any melancholy you may feel and raise your spirits should they be depressed. As look, I'd tell you more of the story, but just accept it. You just feel good when you read these stories. Just go and read them. You will feel so much better about life and yourself. For myself, I can say that since I have been a knight-errant, I have become valiant, polite, generous, well-bred, magnanimous, courteous, dauntless, gentle, patient, and have learned to bear hardships, imprisonments, and enchantments. And though it be such a short time since I have seen myself shut up in a cage like a madman, I hope by the might of my arm, if heaven aid me and fortune thwart me not, to see myself king of some kingdom where I may be able to show the gratitude and generosity that dwell in my heart. For by my faith, Señor, the poor man is incapacitated from showing the virtue of generosity to anyone, though he may possess it in the highest degree. And gratitude that consists of disposition only is a dead thing, just as faith without works is dead. Nungaru says, look, I've read all these books, and I decided to become a knight. And when I did, I became a better person. I was brave and kind, and I did all these wonderful things. And soon, because I'm a great knight, I'm going to get my own kingdom, and then I'll be rich. And what's great about me being rich is then I'll be able to give other people stuff. I can give food to the hungry and money to the poor. I can feed the people without, or I already said feed. I can give clothes to people without any. I can take care of these people because, you know, even if you want to do all that stuff, if you don't have the money to do it, it doesn't really help anybody. For this reason, I should be glad were fortune soon to offer me some opportunity of making myself an emperor, so as to show my heart in doing good to my friends, particularly this poor Sancho Panza, my squire, who is the best fellow in the world. I would gladly give him a county I have promised him this ere so long, only that I am afraid he has not the capacity to govern his realm. I said, what I really need is to become really rich so I can take care of all these people, because that's what I really want to do as a knight, is just to be good to people, especially to my buddy Sancho over here, who's been with me this whole time. I'm definitely going to give him a little place where he can be in charge of and be the governor of some area, county, they say here, which would make him a count. But to be fair, even though I want to do this for Sancho, Sancho's not that bright, and you know he might screw this up. Sancho partly heard these last words of his master and said to him, "Strive hard, you, Señor Don Quixote, to give me that county so often promised by you, and so long looked for by me, for I promise you, there will be no want of capacity in me to govern it. And even if there is, I have heard say that there are men in the world who farm seigneuries, paying so much a year, and they themselves taking charge of the government, while the Lord, with his legs stretched out, enjoys the revenue they pay him, without troubling himself about anything else. Sancho says, yeah, that's right. You're going to give me an area, and I'm going to be in charge of it. This will be great. And you know what? Maybe I'm not bright enough to run this myself, but I have heard that people will manage it for you. You just got to pay them, and then you just kind of lie around and do nothing, and that'll be okay. That's what I'll do, not stand haggling over trifles, but wash my hands at once of the whole business and enjoy my rents like a duke and let things go their own way. So I'm definitely going to hire one of these people, and I'll just collect the interest and all the money. That'd be great. That, brother Sancho, said the canon, only holds good as far as the enjoyment of the revenue goes. The lord of the seigneury must attend to the administration of justice, and here capacity and sound judgment come in, and above all, a firm determination to find out the truth. For if this be wanting in the beginning, the middle and the end will always go wrong. And God as commonly aids the honest intentions of the simple as he frustrates the evil designs of the crafty. And the priest says, well, yeah, they can do all the administrative stuff for you, but you'd still have to be the judge in that area. And that means you got to really think really hard. I don't understand those philosophies, returned Sancho Panza. All I know is I had the country as soon as I shall know how to govern it. For I have as much soul as another, as much body as anyone, and I shall be as much king of my realm as any other of his. Being so, I should do as I liked. And doing as I liked, I should please myself. Pleasing myself, I should be content. When one is content, he has nothing more to desire. When one has nothing more to desire, there is an end of it. So let the county come, and God be with you, and let us see one another, as one blind man said to the other. Sancho says, yeah, that sounds like that'd be really difficult. But, if I'm the king of some small kingdom, then I get to do whatever I want, and that's going to make me happy. I don't have to worry about that stuff because I'd be the king. That is not bad philosophy thou art talking, Sancho, said the canon. But for all that, there is a good deal to be said on this matter of counties. The priest says, we really need to get into this more. There's too much there. To which Don Quixote returned, I know not what more there is to be said. I only guide myself by the example set me by the great Amadis of Gaul, when he made his squire account of the insula firme. And so, without any scruples of conscience, I can make account of Sancho Panza, for he's one of the best squires that ever knight errant had. Don Quixote says, maybe we don't need to talk about it, because this one famous knight, he gave a small area for his squire, and my squire is great, so I'm definitely going to give him something good. The canon was astonished at the methodical's nonsense, if nonsense could be capable of method. Then Don Quixote othered, at the way in which he described the adventure of the Knight of the Lake, at the impression that the deliberate lies of the books he read had made upon him, and lastly had marveled at the simplicity of Sancho, who desired so eagerly to obtain the county his master had promised him. And the priest is sitting there and he says, I cannot believe these two believe this nonsense. It's just ridiculous. By this time, the canon's servants, who had gone to the inn to fetch the sumpter mule, had returned, and making a carpet and the green grass of the meadow serve as a table, they seated themselves in the shade of some trees and made their repast there, that the carter might not be deprived of the advantage of the spot, as has already been said. So the priest's servants have gone off to get some food, and they brought it back, and they're just going to sit there on the grass and eat it. Nice little picnic. Come on, highlight. As they were eating, they suddenly heard a loud noise and the sound of a bell that seemed to come from among some brambles and thick bushes that were close by. In the same instant, they observed a beautiful goat, spotted all over black, white, and brown, spring out of the thicket with a goat herd after it. calling to it and uttering the usual cries to make it stop or turn back to the fold. I was sitting there eating, and then all of a sudden, hey, this goat jumps out of a bush. And the guy in charge of the goat comes chasing the goat and says, here, goat, slow down, goat. The fugitive goat, scared and frightened, ran towards the company as if seeking their protection, and then stood still. And the goat herd coming up, seized it by the horns and began to talk to it as if it were possessed of reason and understanding. Oh, wanderer, wanderer, spotty, spotty, how have you gone limping all this time? What wolves have frightened you, my daughter? Won't you tell me what is the matter, my beauty? What else can it be except that you are a she and cannot keep quiet? A plague on your humors and the humors of those you take after. Come back, my darling. If you will not be so happy, at any rate, you will be safe in the fold or with your companions. For of you who ought to keep and lead them go wandering astray, what will become of them? The goat runs up, sees these people picnicking, and says, whoa, what's going on with all these people? And the goat herd catches up, grabs hold of the goat and says, what are you doing running around, goat? Goats aren't supposed to run around. You need to be stopping here and doing this stuff with me. You need to take care of the rest of the goats because you're the goat in charge. Also, he said something sexist about the goat must be doing this because the goat's a woman. And, let's be fair, that's kind of because the writer, Cervantes, has a bit of sexism there. The goat herd's talk amused all who heard it, but especially the canon, who said to him, as you live, brother, take it easy. Be not in such a hurry to drive this goat back to the fold. For being a female, as you say, she will follow her natural instinct in spite of all you can do to prevent it. And then the priest says, you know what? Just relax on your goat, because, women, they just go and do whatever they want. How are you going to stop a lady goat? Again, Cervantes, kind of a sexist. Very, but still not okay. Take this morsel and drink a sup, and that will soothe your irritation. In the meantime, the goat itself. And so saying, he handed him the loins of a cold rabbit on a fork. Priest says, hey, goat herd, just relax. We're eating. Have a little snack with us. And he hands him some food. The goat herd took it with thanks and drank and calmed himself, and then said, I should be sorry if your worships were to take me for a simpleton for having spoken so seriously as I did to this animal. But the truth is, there is a certain mystery in the words I used. Look, I said a bunch of ridiculous stuff to this goat, but there's a reason I did it. There's a secret known to goat herds. I am a clown, but not so much of one that I know how to behave to men and to beasts. Look, I'm kind of a ridiculous guy, but I know the difference between a goat and a person and how they talk to other people. That I can well believe, said the curate, for I know already by experience that the woods breed men of learning and shepherds harbor philosophers. And the other priest says, oh yeah, when I talk to shepherds and people that hang out in the woods, they're often quite intelligent. This is probably because around the time that Cervantes was writing this, there was also a movement in poetry called the pastoral movement, where people thought that shepherds lived the most wonderful lives, and they were the most intelligent people out there whatsoever. Nobody really thought. It's a little Bo Peep thing. It's a shepherdess who's all in a nice white dress walking around with sheep, as opposed to dragging them out of the mud and having to shear them and dealing with all the diseases that sheep have. That's the kind of thing they're probably talking about. At all events, senor, returned the goat herd, they shelter men of experience, that you may see the truth of this and grasp it. Though I may seem to put myself forward without being asked, I will, if it will not tire you, gentlemen, and you will give me your attention for a little, tell you a true story which will confirm this gentleman's word, and he pointed to the curate, as well as my own. I said, well, I know that we're really all that smart, but we've been around the block a few times. We know what's going on. Let me tell you a story about this. That'll be really good. To this, Don Quixote replied, seeing that this affair has a certain color of chivalry about it, I, for my part, brother, will hear you most gladly, and so will all these gentlemen. from the high intelligence they possess and their love of curious novelties that interest, charm, and entertain the mind, as I feel quite sure your story will do. So begin, friend, for we are all prepared to listen. Don Quixote says, oh, a story. I love stories. It's going to be about a shepherd, but really it's going to be just like these night stories that I like so much. So definitely everybody's going to listen to you. Go ahead and start, Mr. Shepherd. I draw my stakes, said Sancho, and will retreat with this pasty to the brook there, where I mean to victual myself for 3 days. For I've heard my lord Don Quixote say that a knight-errant squire should eat until he can hold no more, whenever he has the chance. Because it often happens then to get by accident into a wood so thick that they cannot find a way out of it for 6 days. And if the man is not well filled or his alforjas well stored, there he may stay, as very often he does, turned into a dried mummy. Sancho says, I'm not so big on listening to this story. I'm going to grab a bunch of food and I'm going to walk over there where I don't have to listen, and I am going to stuff myself until I'm huge and fat. Thou art in the right of it, Sancho, said Don Quixote. Go where thou wilt, and eat all thou canst. For I've had enough, and only want to give my mind its refreshment, as I shall by listening to this good fellow's story. Is what we all shall do, said the canon, and then begged the goatherd to begin the promised tale. Don Quixote says, yeah, Sancho, go eat all you want. I'm done eating, so you can have whatever I was going to eat. What I really need is to hear this story. The one priest says, oh, yeah, we're all going to listen to this story. You take the food. Please, goatherd, tell us your story. The goatherd gave the goat, which he held by the horns, a couple of slaps on the back, saying, lie down beside me here, Spotty, for we have time enough to return to our fold. The goat seemed to understand him, for as her master seated himself, she stretched herself quietly beside him and looked up in his face to show him she was all attention to what he was going to say. And then in these words, he began his story. So the goatherd says, yeah, okay, I'll start my story. Hey, come here, goat, lay down, listen to the story with everybody else. And the goat lays down, and the goatherd starts his story. So now we get into the goatherd story. So this is all what he's saying rather than what's going on in the bigger story of Don Quixote. 3 leagues from this valley, there is a village which, though small, is one of the richest in all this neighborhood. And in it there lived a farmer, a very worthy man, so much respected, that although it is to be so is the natural consequence of being rich, he was even more respected for his virtue than for the wealth he had acquired. Look, just over here, there's a little village. It's got a lot of rich people in it. And there's one farmer who people really respected. And, we all just respect rich people because, they've got money and they deserve respect. Again, pretty much a prejudice of the times. He says, but this guy was also a really good person. So we respected him for that too, even more than we respected him just because he's rich. But what made him still more fortunate, as he said himself, was having a daughter of such exceeding beauty, rare intelligence, gracefulness, and virtue, that everyone who knew her and beheld her marveled at the extraordinary gifts with which heaven and nature had endowed her. Goat says, and even more, that he's just a really good person and he's rich. Also, his daughter is awesome. She's really smart. She's really pretty. She's very kind. She does all kinds of nice things. She's just a wonderful person. As a child, she was beautiful. She continued to grow in beauty. And at the age of 16, she was most lovely. The fame of her beauty began to spread abroad through all the villages around. Why do I say the villages around? Merely when it spread to distant cities and even made its way into the halls of royalty and reached the ears of people of every class who came from all sides to see her, as if to see something rare and curious, or some wonder-working image. So not only was she really pretty, she was massively pretty and got more and more beautiful as time went on, until the entire kingdom, people were showing up and just coming to this tiny little village and said, hey, look at the pretty girl. Which, sounds a little creepy when you put it out like that. Her father watched over her, and she watched over herself for there are no locks or guards or bolts that can protect a young girl better than her own modesty. Again, we're dealing with the patriarchal society of this of the time, which continues. So, look, nobody's attacking this girl because everybody's watching over her. But the fact that she's not flaunting her beauty is what's really keeping her safe, says the goat herd. The wealth of the father and the beauty of the daughter led many neighbors as well as strangers to seek her for a wife. But he, as one might well be, who had the disposal of so rich a jewel, was perplexed and unable to make up his mind to which of her countless suitors he. Okay, so very much at this time, a woman was the property of her father until she got married, and he would decide who she married. And that's what they're discussing here. You know, that this farmer's really rich, and one of the things that makes him rich is having this wonderful daughter, because he can essentially sell her to a new husband who would give him money for that, called a dowry. And then they would join their families, and you know, he would look a lot better. So, but he can't decide which of these many people he should do that for. I was one among the many who felt a desire so natural, and as her father knew who I was, and I was of the same town, of pure blood, in the bloom of life, and very rich in possessions, I had great hopes of success. The goatherd says, I was one of those people trying to marry his daughter, and I was really rich back then, and I knew her, and we're neighbors, so I thought I had a pretty good shot. There was another of the same place and qualifications who also sought her, and this made her father's choice hang in the balance, for he felt that on either of us, his daughter could well be bestowed. So as to escape from the state of perplexity, he resolved to refer the matter to Leandra, for that is the name of the rich damsel who's reduced me to misery. Reflecting that, as we were both equal, it would be best to leave it to his dear daughter to choose according to her inclination, a course that is worthy of imitation by all fathers who wish to settle their children in life. So look, I also have this neighbor who's just a good person as I am, and he wanted to marry her too. Since the father couldn't decide between the two of us, he decided, oh, maybe I'll actually ask my daughter who she wants to marry. What a crazy, wacky idea. Then the goatherd says, yeah, if you can't decide, you could actually ask the person whose life it matters to. Again, totally normal for this time. I do not mean that they ought to leave them to make a choice of what is contemptible and bad, but that they should place before them what is good, and then allow them to make a good choice as they please. And the goatherd says, yeah, you can give women a choice who they marry, but you got to limit those choices so they can only make a good choice. If you don't think it's a good choice, you got to stop women from making their own choices. Again, totally normal for this time. I do not know which Leandra chose. I only know her father put us both off with the tender age of his daughter in vague words that neither bound him nor dismissed us. So the daughter may have made her choice. We don't know, because when the goatherd came and said, hey, what's going on here? The dad says, she's still really young. We're going to wait, check it out, but I'm not going to tell you which. But still, keep coming around, keep trying. My rival is called Anselmo, and I myself, Eugenio. You may know the names of the personages that figure in this tragedy. The end of it, which is still in suspense, it was plain to see it must be disastrous. And then the goatherd just says, well, these are our names, so you'll know who they are. And by the way, we still don't know how this story is going to end, because it's still going on. Yeah, we'll get through this. About this time, there arrived in our town one Vicente de la Roca, son of a poor peasant of the same town, the said Vicente having returned from service as a soldier in Italy and divers other parts. There's this poor kid. He's been traveling around being a soldier. He just showed up in town. A captain who chanced to pass that way with his company had carried him off from our village when he was a boy of about 12 years. And now 12 years later, the young man came back in a soldier's uniform, arrayed in 1,000 colors, and all over glass trinkets and fine steel chains. So this guy, as was reasonably common, when he was a little boy, he got snatched up by an army walking through, and he went, had a pretty decent life as a soldier, and now he's come back. He's got all these awards and a big fancy uniform. Today he would appear in one gay dress, tomorrow in another, but all flimsy and gaudy, of little substance and less worth. This guy has a bunch of clothes, and they're all fancy, but they're not good clothes. They'll tear apart, but they look really fancy. The peasant folk, who are naturally malicious, and when they have nothing to do can be malice itself, remarked all this and took note of his finery and jewelry, piece by piece, and discovered that he had 3 suits of different colors, with garters and stockings to match. But he made so many arrangements and combinations out of them that if they had not counted them, anyone would have sworn that he had made a display of more than 10 suits of clothes and 20 plumes. It says, the poor people of the village, I notice he looks like he's got a bunch of different clothes all the time, but he's only got 3, but they're all these bright different colors, and he swaps them around all the time, so it looks like he has a bunch more, which is a wise way to do it. Do not look upon all this that I am telling you about the clothes as uncalled for or spun out. They have a great deal to do with the story. Or he says, look, it sounds like I'm being petty talking about his clothes and he's not really rich, but trust me, this matters to the story. He used to seat himself on a bench under the great poplar in our plaza, and there he would keep us all hanging open-mouthed on the stories he told us of his exploits. Instead of an evening, he'd be sitting there where we all gather in the town, and he would tell us these great stories about what was happening and what all he'd done in these 12 years he'd been gone. There was no country on the face of the globe he had not seen, or battle he had not been engaged in. He'd killed more Moors than there are in Morocco and Tunis, and fought more single combats, according to his own account, than Garcilaso, Diego Garcia de Paredes, and 1,000 others he named. Out of all, he'd come victorious, without losing a drop of blood. And this soldier would tell us stories that he's been everywhere, and he has beat everybody in combat. Just had a bunch of fights. On the other hand, he showed us marks of wounds, which, though they could not be made out, he said were gunshot wounds received in diverse encounters and actions. The guy would show him, hey, look, I got all these scars from where people were shooting at me, and I survived. I said, we can't really see those scars, but yeah, sure, okay. Lastly, with monstrous impudence, he used to say you to his equals, and even those who knew that what he was, and declare that his arm was his father, and his deeds his pedigree, and that being a soldier, he was as good as the king himself. I said, this is very much about the Spanish and the way that language works. He said, he would use a common form, an intimate form, a friendly form, to people that he should be formal with. And he said, yeah, I'm just as good as anybody else. I was a soldier. I can talk to the king like he's, some guy I know from the bar. And to add to these swaggering ways, he was a trifle of a musician and played the guitar with such a flourish that some said he made it speak. Nor did his accomplishments end here, for he's just something of a poet too. And on every trifle that happened in the town, he made a ballad a league long. Not only did that, he was a bit of a musician as well. He played the guitar. He's really good at it. And he wrote songs, and then he would sing and play those songs at the night. And he'd just write songs about whatever was going on in the village that day. So that's where we'll end, about halfway through. We've introduced the characters in the goat herd story. And that brings us about to our time. So we will kick over when we pop up. Yep, there we go. Oh, yes,
Thank you.
I had an okay 4th of July, Alex.
All right. Thank you, Phil, for that weekly book club session and our reading of Don Quixote. I enjoyed every single week, and tune back in for the next edition on season 12. So, all right, that concludes our day here in Columbus. Gila, you got a question? I see you with your hand up. Hold on one second. I think I can unmute you.
Okay, so I have, yeah, right, you hear me?
I hear you, Gila. Yes.
All right, so I will ask you something. Easy way. It was call you asked me at for call it about the call you to stop in a meeting for PAL.
Uh, I missed the last part of that, Gila. What was the
The
last?
meeting at calling at 4 o'clock for PAL 8. He means call you stop a meeting for AP.
We did have some book club sessions prior to us leaving the pandemic, but we will start them up again when we come back into programming. So we appreciate it though, Gila, and I always like seeing you on here. So thank you for continuing to join us. Thanks again, Phil. And we will see you all tomorrow as we continue season 11. Come back and join us in the morning. Have a good night, everyone.
Okay, everybody.